Welcome to GrowthMasters, where we crack the code on driving and accelerating B2B revenue growth. I'm Sankar Sundaresan, the founder and CEO of SkyGeni, and I'm thrilled to be your host on this journey. Each episode, we sit down with industry titans, revenue superstars, and C-level executives to dive deep into how they mastered the art and science of revenue acceleration. Buckle up as we learn about their battle-tested strategies, playbooks and tools, and uncover the secrets to building high-performing revenue teams capable of driving and accelerating growth across all economic environments. Hello, everyone. Welcome to GrowthMasters. Thank you for tuning in today. We have a fantastic conversation lined up for you. Joining us today is Ken Lyons, the Chief Revenue Officer at Cleo. Cleo is a pioneer and global category leader in ecosystem integration. Cleo's cloud-based ecosystem integration platform enables more than 4,000 customers to rapidly onboard trading partners, build, automate, and manage integrations, and accelerate revenue-generating business processes. Ken himself has over 20 years of experience leading and scaling highly effective sales, marketing, and customer success teams, and experience developing people, working effectively across organizational boundaries, and establishing a dynamic and effective sales culture. Ken, we're thrilled to have you here today on Growth Masters. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Our listeners are really interested in your journey, Ken, and I know you have a lot to share. So let's get right into it. Um, Ken, as I mentioned, you have extensive experience in leading revenue teams. Can you take us back to the beginning? What sparked your interest in sales, and how did your experiences at companies like Tumbleweed and Axway prepare you to take the top revenue job at Clio?
That's a great question. I was very fortunate to begin my sales career, really my business career, as an SDR, as someone that was tasked with trying to generate activity, and was really forced to understand the value of a message that was created for the benefit of the customer, and really getting into the problem that a particular company solves, and also the structure that's needed in order to, at the core, be able to make the determination between a good day and a day that maybe wasn't so productive. So that's where I began, and then as I progressed, I always had an interest in leading people, and the experience that I had over the years as a frontline manager was very beneficial, just in terms of recognizing that everybody is motivated by different things, and as a manager, it's very important, both from a customer perspective, to understand what their true final goal line is and what their success definition is, but also for the people that you manage as well. And that's culminated in a great experience that I've had here at Cleo over the last 8 years as Chief Revenue Officer.
Excellent. Excellent. So, sort of getting into the specifics of your role as CRO of Cleo, we're curious to understand how do you take revenue targets from the board and then decompose them into specific pipeline creation goals for every team and every rep at Cleo?
Yeah, I mean, we're a private equity backed organization, and I've been part of private equity companies now for some time, and it is always that balance of demonstrating quarterly health with making sure that there's a long-term trajectory that you're on, that the growth that you're experiencing is sustainable. So reverse engineering from the top end plan, the top line plan, to behaviors and metrics you can measure on a daily basis to make sure you're on track is key. And certainly in any business, but especially in a SaaS business, a pipeline is key. And pipeline is not only an indicator that you have enough activity to make the growth targets that you want, but the type of pipeline you're generating is also a great validation that your message and your value proposition and your differentiation is in fact having the impact that you're hoping that it's having. So we do a lot of analysis on not only the aggregate of the pipeline we're generating, but by compartmentalizing the various categories of pipeline that we have by customer size, whether it's net new or install base, the industry that they're in. And we leverage a tool called SkyGeni that has the ability to take data from Salesforce and in real time slice it in various ways that we review on a daily basis. Obviously, when we get into the sales execution portion of it, once we have qualified opportunities, there's a sales methodology that we live by that certainly has a tight discipline in terms of steps and assets that we follow, but it's also
Hmm.
very agile. And we've been able to innovate fairly rapidly over the years by looking for opportunities within our sales motion
Right,
that maybe can be more dedicated to a particular kind of
right.
customer, and that drives our training as well.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense, Ken. Makes sense. So once you set goals, of course, setting goals is crucial. But once you set goals, how do you track progress, and how do you ensure that all of your teams have enough pipeline to hit their revenue targets? And so how do you track things like coverage, pipeline quality, and pipeline progression after a pipeline has been created?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me this is one of the greatest responsibilities that someone in any leadership role has, but to some extent, especially in a head of sales or VP of sales type of a function, is it is your responsibility to make sure you're providing your people enough opportunity that they can be successful. So we spend a lot of time analyzing
Right.
territory. We spend a lot of time analyzing segmentation and the pipeline being created there. Our business is probably not different than any other, that depending upon the type of transaction we're
Hmm.
working, it might be a net new customer, an install-based customer, certain verticals where maybe we have a lot of strength or a differentiation, we see a variance in win rates. We see a variance in
Hmm.
ASPs. And this dovetails into how we design territories and how we design pipeline ratios and dependencies that are needed there. So the analysis that we do on a weekly basis is not only how are the trailing indicators tracking in terms of deals we're closing, but also looking out not just current quarter, but 1, 2 quarters out
Hmm.
beyond that on what is the trajectory that we're on from a pipeline standpoint by team and by individual as
Right.
well.
And that dovetails very well, Ken, with the theme that we've heard from multiple revenue leaders, which is, the importance of shaping future quarter pipeline and paying enough attention to that, even as you're executing for the current quarter, and kind of having to strike that balance between how much of your personal time and energy goes into just pursuing current quarter deals versus ensuring that you're setting yourself up for success in Q3 and Q4 when you still have the bandwidth and runway to do so.
Yeah, and look, the way that I always think about it is we're playing two very distinct games simultaneously. And we talk about that in the form of there's a 30
Hmm.
foot game, which is very
Right.
tactical. And that's the blocking and tackling of deal progression, of making sure that we're providing the necessary value to our
Right.
customers to maintain a predictable quarter over quarter, month over month type of sales
Right.
execution. But as importantly, there's the 30,000 foot game that we're playing every day as well in terms of are we having effective interactions with our
Mhm.
customers? Is the initial call that we're having where we're trying to ascertain what is their problem and fundamentally, can we
Mhm.
help? And is that coming
Right.
across? So we leverage a tool called Gong
Uh-huh.
as well that we listen to many of our early stage conversations with
Right.
customers, our proposal calls as well. And it's provided not only a great training ground for new employees coming into Clio, but it's also a great quality check to make
Right.
sure that the mindset we're bringing to every interaction is genuinely to see if we can help, as opposed to trying to close a deal. And as simple as that sounds, that distinction is to me anyway a big difference between very sustainable, predictable selling organizations and ones that are more lumpy and unpredictable.
Right. 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 Now, great segue into. I mean, you mentioned that Clio is private equity backed, and one of the themes that we hear about a lot of times from CROs or private equity backed customers is preparing for and having conversations with the board members and using data and insights and bringing board members up to speed on how do you plan to take their sort of high level directives in terms of revenue targets and giving them more specifics on, okay, here is how we plan to hit these targets. This is where we expect to be at the end of this year, next year, and so on and so forth. So can you just shed some light on, how do you prepare for conversations with your board members?
Yeah, and this is a topic very near and dear to my heart. So I think that board meetings can either be an incredibly productive quarterly event that gives you a forcing function to really analyze where we need to improve and invest in order to advance the business.
Mhm.
It also can prove as a monumental waste of time if all we're doing is trying to appease the board. And the ironic thing that anyone in a sales leadership role will be able to relate to is in some form it's a QBR. And we've all seen account executives who present a QBR simply from the perspective of trying to survive it and say what needs to be said in order to get off the stage. And we've also seen the account executives who come prepared to have a very meaningful conversation about what they're seeing in the business, some areas that are going well and where they can keep doubling down on that, and some areas for improvement as well. So we are as intentional as we can be to use board meetings as just an additional mechanism to
Mhm.
pressure test the business.
Right.
I think one of the greatest attributes of a leadership team is being an intense realist, being able to identify reality and embrace reality, and then look for ways to improve reality. And we use data quite a bit, like every other company does, in order to drive the discussion topics and the key areas of focus for board meetings. But
Mhm.
we're also careful not to fall in love with making the data tell the story that we want to tell.
Mm.
The data speaks for itself,
Mm.
and we've been able to move to a cadence on a quarterly basis that we walk away with board sessions with two or three very important things to work on over the
Mm.
next 90 days. And we measure them on a monthly basis as an organization.
Got it. Got it. Now, looking inward, how do you handle conversations with your CEO, CMO, CFO, and your product leaders? And how do you drive alignment? Because one of the things that, and as you can probably relate to, as you get larger, staying aligned between different members of the C-suite becomes an increasing challenge. So I'm just curious to understand, how do you, use data and insights to drive alignment with your peers at Clio and your CEO as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to start with a very clear shared objective that the executive team shares and frontline managers shares and employees share, really, in terms of how are we measuring success, both in the short term, this current year, versus our 3 and 5 year plan. And every decision that we make needs to be aligned with that North Star that we've identified. Now, that North Star can fluctuate and it can change as the economy fluctuates and the market that you're in fluctuates as well. But the only way that I've certainly experienced productive interaction cross functionally is when at the beginning of every discussion, we remind ourselves what is our North Star? What are we trying to achieve here? Because sometimes growth is not the only thing that matters. We might be on a profitability run. We might be trying to penetrate a particular industry. We might be trying to grow a particular geographic region. And having alignment on the North Star, again, short term and long term, is the foundation of making sure that these conversations can number one, take place from a very productive place. Now, the second thing that I've experienced is we all have to be willing to sacrifice for the betterment of the organization. And sometimes that means that a particular agenda or something that's very, very important to me in our customer success organization, for example, as much as that might be a priority, it might be secondary to the importance of something going on in product or engineering. And
Right.
being able to, as a leadership team, prioritize that is very, very important. We're very fortunate here at Clio that we have a CEO in Mahesh Rajasekaran who's very not only aware of cultivating that dynamic, but he represents that very well also, and that really filters down throughout the organization.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. And then, every journey, Ken, as you know, I'm sure, you've seen across different roles that you've had, and I've experienced myself. Every journey has its hurdles, right? Sometimes things go well, sometimes things don't go well. And yet leaders are almost always defined by how they navigate the challenges that they face, right? So looking at your experiences at Clio and prior to Clio, And specifically, maybe if we can focus this on Clio per se, what were some of the challenges that you have faced driving predictable revenue growth at Clio, and how have you navigated them?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me it starts with the mindset that as leaders we all need to have, and for me it's fundamentally we're problem solvers, and if we're not solving problems, then we're really not doing our job. And what that mindset creates is an expectation that there are going to always be problems, and we need to go find them, and we should always be strengthening the weakest link. In our business, like everybody else's, we had a pretty sizable disruption when
Mhm.
COVID happened, and we were forced to not only change the way that we work in terms of remote, but also look at the industries that
Mhm.
we serve, and how are we going to tailor our go-to-market to really adhere to a very open-ended change that was going on. And where we decided to invest our time was in very fast go lives
Mhm.
for customers. And typically our projects would be 3 to 6 months in terms of go live. We had people live within 30 days because that is what the
Right.
market needed. And going back to one of the earlier points that you made, the only reason that that shift was possible is because as a leadership team, we did decide on a
Mhm.
North Star that we had for that period of time, which was ensuring that our customers could survive a shift in the way that they were interacting with their
Mhm.
customers. And the process we put in place to support that was getting them time to value that was rapidly evident to
Right.
them. And we certainly had our areas of adjustment, just like every other organization. But that was a very good exercise for us to go through because it really proved to us that we can be agile and we can react quickly.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Now again, and double clicking on COVID. I mean, I know one thing that I know, having worked with you for a long time, Ken, is that Clio bucked the trend, and unlike many companies that experienced dramatic revenue declines and growth rate declines during COVID, and in many cases, Clio kind of bucked the trend and experienced actually a good deal of positive growth during the pandemic, right? So, what kind of lessons, can our listeners learn from how you navigated through tough times? Because at the end of the day, COVID's not going to be the last time when we have rough weather that sales leaders and revenue leaders have to navigate. So, what lessons might our audience learn from you and from how you helped Cleo navigate the pandemic, and not just navigate the pandemic and just come out alive, but come out stronger and with more revenue at the end of the pandemic than at the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about data and we talk a lot about the science part of the equation when it comes to any business, but we can't discount the art part of it. We can't discount the human element. And something that we're very intentional about here at Clio, certainly, and I certainly am, is really bringing people in who are naturally
Right.
optimists, who are the kind of a person that finds the one reason something is possible and doesn't see the 9 reasons that maybe it's
Right.
not likely. And that mindset of solving problems and really embracing the challenge to be the
Right.
company that grows, be the company that is able to be there to really help our
Right.
customers. That was a big part of our ability not only to continue to grow during COVID, but really build an even stronger foundation that we benefited
Mm.
from since then. Anytime there's times of uncertainty and many projects that we're involved in, we're servicing customers where their current solution
Mm.
isn't working. And they've been told before with words that things are going to work. Well, now they need it to be
Mm.
proven to them.
Mm.
And that's a certain kind of personality. One of the monikers that we have in the hiring process is we want people who want to be great,
Mm.
not people who just want to be employed. And there's nothing wrong with just wanting to be employed,
Right.
but to really thrive in our environment, I want people to grow out of their current job within 3 years. I want people looking for the next thing. I want people looking to take on more responsibility and really stretch to a point of hopefully achieving things that maybe they didn't even know they were capable of. And when we take that attitude and that dedication to perfection to our customers, it does stand out. And it stands out in the follow-ups that we do. It's in the prep for the meetings that we do and the meetings that we run.
Mhm.
And that's been something that we're very proud of here.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Ken, thank you very much for joining us here today and getting and sharing some of the best practices and some of the lessons that you've learned navigating times both good and bad at Cleo and at roles prior to Cleo. Again, thank you very much for appearing on the show, and I'm sure our listeners will probably rewind and listen to sections of this podcast more than once. And thank you very much for appearing on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wrap for this episode of Growth Masters. Remember, growth is a journey, not a destination. Keep experimenting, learning, and scaling. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button and share it with your fellow revenue leaders. Until next time, keep on growing.